Jacob Elordi, Justin Kurzel, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
Now, since I'm in the happy position of having both of you, I'm going to ask this question first. Justin, why did you choose Jacob for this role? Jacob, why did you choose to work with Justin? You go first.
Well, I think when Justin Kurzel sends an email, it's not really like it's not a question. It's like, okay, I'll be there. When do we start?
Why?
For me, because I watched, I think, Snowtown when I was probably 14 or 15, and it was kind of like a cinematic awakening. It was, I realised that is the thing that I want to be a part of, and those are the kind of movies that I want to make. And Justin's been the voice of that, I think, in Australian cinema and in international cinema for as long as I've sort of consumed movies.
Just to stay with you for a moment, can you tell us what that is? When you see that thing of his, what is it?
You can't really describe it, but it's this. It's a raw truth. It's an undeniable honesty, and it's the frames that he chooses to hang on. Does the camera go through the door? Does it stay outside the door? It's the kind of sensitive hand that he has when he cuts his films, when he shoots his films. It's all intimate and it's all alive. It's like having your finger on the pulse at all times. You know, and he doesn't let you go. He grabs you by the throat, and you're in. Whether you like the film or you don't like the film, you're made to watch it. You know, it's deliberate.
It's a very good description. What made you pick Jacob Elordi as an actor for this very important role?
Well, I just started watching his work, and I just thought, wow, what a wonderful, fantastic actor. And there was something there is just something so cinematic about Jacob. He has this sort of almost like this old school sort of cinema presence.
Nice flower.
I stole it.
Oh, it's well worth the larceny.
You're not going to turn me in, are you?
I'm not so brave.
There's a sort of thing that happens when you see actors that have that thing that goes beyond performance. There's something there that the eye is really drawn to. And that's what I always sort of look for with actors, is when you can feel them in a moment and in a scene. There's something very real about them, and you can sort of see them listening to the other actors, and there was just that instant response that I had when I saw him on screen, and I was hoping that I could lure him back to Australia and make this show.
We'll come back to the lure back to Australia in a moment, but just to stay with you, Justin, for a moment, it's a big responsibility to take such a revered work in the Australian canon and put that artistry on screen. Can you just tell me a little bit about how you were able to do that, to take the art of the book and make it and put it into the series?
A little bit with Richard. I was on Bruny Island at his shack, and he talked about whether I'd be interested in doing it as a TV series, and I thought that was a really interesting idea because of the sort of structure of the book and the different time periods in which it kind of goes through. That the longer form would be a great way of telling it. But he just said to me, look, you've got to find your way with it, which is a wonderful thing for a director to hear from an author of an incredibly celebrated and brilliant book. And sort of make it your own and find the kind of cinema in it. And that's what it was, really. And whenever I would sort of, there was an ambition in it and a sort of scale in it that really sort of, I was very cautious about. And Richard was always wonderful at going, it's a human story, the lens has to be with Dorrigo. What does he see? What does he do? It's not a historical piece, it's a human piece. And that was always very comforting to me.
You said that you went away and read Richard Flanagan. I can't recall whether you'd actually already read this particular book, but you bathed a bit in his...
I hadn't. It was an introduction to him, which was profound.
And you spent quite a lot of time actually making that introduction, getting to know his work and the character.
Yeah.
But tell me how you built the character of Dorrigo from the script, from Justin, but from your own reading.
Well, I was very lucky because I had about a year to get ready, and I was so nervous to meet Justin. We met in Melbourne after he sort of sent me this letter, that I kind of did a lot of reading before we even had the meeting about doing the show. So I kind of sort of launched into it. And then I just had the year to sort of learn things and forget things and live in things and study cinema from sort of all the different perspectives and go through Basho's work and just kind of immerse in like a big stew, just sit in the pot and just put
Basho's
everything in.
the Japanese poet.
Yeah, exactly. And then that will lead to this poet, which leads to this painter, which leads to this kind of thing. And then you find some sketches and you go in the war archives and there's so much information and so much to take in so that you can get there and then have Justin tell you to leave your books at the door and act for real.
So is any of that, do you think you can see any of that bathing in the Japanese war poets, in Flanagan's work? Can you see that in his role, or is that happening on set?
No, look, I go through quite a large and long kind of, I call them like these manifestos that I kind of give the actors, which is really a training time. It's almost like a pre-season where you read and listen and experience as much as possible that might be connected to the material. And then by the time you get on set, for me, the most interesting part of it is to leave that at the door and just be present in scenes. And I do think through osmosis it's there, you can feel it constantly. Jacob was reading on set, every time I saw him, he was reading on set and taking photographs, and he was sort of involved in a lot of the things that meant something to him in the research. But on the day, it's sort of then about, okay, let's put it away and let's really sort of own what the scene is and be really present in the environment and with the actor opposite you and see where it goes, see what the day is going to kind of harness in a way.
I'll go first to the in your role actually to the romantic story, the love story. Now, watching it on screen, it's extremely intense, and obviously a lot of that has to do with the way the camera is placed.
Sure.
And Justin's decisions. But there's also a very beautiful restraint in the way that you perform in those scenes, which we can see, we can feel as well. How much of that is you bringing that to the role, and how much is direction?
I mean, Dorrigo's from the text, from the book itself, you get a pretty clear idea of the kind of person he is, and he's not somebody that wastes words. So I think a lot of that comes directly from sort of Richard's idea of what this man is. But then it also just happens naturally when you're working with someone like Odessa, and Justin's giving us this space to have these 5-10 minute takes that we can just live in. Do you have a favourite poet?
I have a favorite poem. Should I find it? They've got it. Studying. Do you like it?
Did I read that you actually kicked everyone else out of the room so that the two of you are
When
performing?
Yeah, that did happen. That happened in the pub there. Yeah. And we just got to sort of live in it and be in it with a Justin hiding behind the table saying, maybe just touch your hand now. But when you're working with someone like Des, she has this undeniable energy and she just bursts in on action. So it just sort of naturally happened that Dorrigo would be a counterweight to that sort of, she's so full of life and her life is on the sleeve and his is internal, so it just kind of was a natural reaction to her as well,
Now, to go to the war side of the story, now I noticed that you, and of course Richard Flanagan, also your screenwriter, all have family connections to war, and particularly to, in their case, to the experience of the POW, which is what this is about. So does your generation of artists in Australia have a particular either affinity with and responsibility to these stories, do you think?
Yeah, look, I remember my grandfather as a kid. I remember seeing him sort of leave the house for hours and secretly drink and lose himself at the RSL and have to sort of pick him up at the end of the day. And it just seemed like there was always this sort of fog that was with him. So I distinctly remember as a kid the legacy of the war, being around these soldiers, seeing the effects on their relationships, especially with their partners and their children. Anzac Day to me was going down and watching the men walk, and so I have a very deep connection with that. I have 19-year-old daughters now, and I'm trying to, because they don't, they don't see their grandfather. It's trying to sort of keep these stories and keep this legacy very real and close. So it was always it was always there, and I think when I was sort of growing up, it was very much sort of part of our culture and our history, and it was just very present. So it's and I always wanted to do a piece about Australians and war and what that legacy is, and there was something about Richard's book told through the prism of a love story that I thought was incredibly touching and very unique, and actually quite different from many other, I think, war stories
versions that we're used to. What about you? Were these stories unfamiliar to you? I don't mean the book, but I mean the story of the Thai Burma Railway, for example.
My only kind of reference to it was Bridge on the River Kwai. I didn't have a great knowledge of it at all, so it was really starting from scratch.
Major, I don't have 100 men to give you. These men are too sick.
Australians should wash like Japanese.
Okay, then give me soap. Give me water and I will clean them myself, but do not send these men to their death.
I'm not. You are to say.
People are actually comparing this to Bridge on the River Kwai.
You know what's funny? They're so different.
Yes,
at the
I know.
same time.
Yeah.
I saw a few things that were like that, but the same.
Intensity. Actually, I did want to ask you both about that, because this is I think, a unique portrayal of jungle. It's different to what I can think of in previous films, partly because it's so dark and so internal that we barely see the sky, the soldiers sort of spectral against that very dark green. Was that intentional, or were you just, I know you're filming in New South Wales, so you can't make it look like Thailand. Is it art or is it practicality?
Yeah, it was approaching it from memory of Dorrigo, what he recalls. There was incredible descriptions by Richard of this sort of ghoulish world of fire pits around the camps to keep away the tigers, and sounds and animals that they would hear. There's something kind of quite exotic but quite kind of gothic about it as well, in the descriptions, and that's what I was interested in, not a kind of literal interpretation of the jungle. It's like what is the jungle in the memory of Dorrigo's mind, and bodies. I was really struck by looking at a lot of the reference shots of how these how the bodies told so much story, the emaciation of them and the deterioration of them, but just their skin and amongst this sort of darkness of the jungle, that became very important to me. How a figure would sort of be able to be captured and highlighted amongst that kind of darkness. So we definitely had a very different take on what we thought the jungle was, and to us it was more in the mind rather than the literal.
It's beautiful. I just want to ask about one particular scene. It's one of many extraordinary films in the series, and it's a true story of a man who was beaten to death. That goes on to become a war crime trial. Is there a particular responsibility when you're dealing with a piece of material that you know to be a true scene?
Yeah, there is. It's and that particular scene, when you're reading the book, it's the scene that you come to, and we were all very conscious and aware of the scene coming. Yes, there's a lot of preparation, and you want to get it right, and you want it to be as true as possible in the observation of what happened. But at the same time, you sort of need a set that is incredibly secure and comforting. And I've often found with quite traumatised scenes that they actually kind of create the most loving feeling on set. And that particular day, really looking after Tom and also the Japanese actors, which is hugely effective on them as well. So, it's a very, very important scene in the series. It really is sort of the cornerstone in how the older Dorrigo reflects and also lives his life in the present. Yeah, it was definitely a challenging thing to
Do
film.
you, and I can't remember in the blocking whether you're there for all the scene or not, I'm sorry about that, but what do you remember about the scene?
I just remember being forced to watch, because the sort of most important thing, it wasn't, obviously they were going through this sort of excruciating pain, but the thing that was the hardest, because you become a mate when you're in that situation. We're on these camps for however many weeks we were shooting, we were all hungry together, and to watch him even, you know, lay in the mud for 6 minutes was just, it was traumatic, it was horrible. You know, it was this being forced to, because you weren't allowed to avert your gaze, otherwise you'd get beat. So having to watch, you know...
Not by me.
No. But like the truth is, they made you watch, and that's what the real punishment was. It wasn't the person that had the pain inflicted on them. It was that you had to watch somebody that you love more than anything just be kicked and drown in the mud, and that became very real while we were shooting. You know, because your mate is freezing cold on the floor in the mud.
This is you coming back to work with Australian crews, so that's very special. I want to ask you about that, but also because your fellow actors went through extreme physical sort of training to look like prisoners. Describe the experience of working with them.
I mean, coming home was just so important to me, because this was what my sort of dream was. My whole life was to you know, tell Australian stories and work at home, and there was an immediate shorthand when I got on set with all of these artists. But with the boys, it was just it was an immediate care for them, because some of us went to the same drama school for the same stint and got kicked out at the same time, and
For the same crimes.
yes. You know, so the funny thing was, it was incredibly cathartic for me. It was something that I think I've needed for about a decade of making films. So it was the whole thing was more. It was my pleasure. It was like a great therapy for me. You know.
You talk about wanting to stay in touch with that younger version of yourself. Did you find he was still here?
Yeah, I had to go find him in the jungle. I had to lose a bunch of weight, and then, but yeah, it actually did. It was this, it was relearning why I love this thing, and understanding how simple and true it can be. Because there was something on this set where each department, we were so stripped back and minimal that everybody was an artist working toward a singular goal, and it was to make something that was profound and important and personal. And when you have each department doing that, when you're helping Grips carry the boxes and they're helping you take this thing, and there's no sort of, there's no system in place, there's no hierarchy, it's just everybody working toward one creative goal. That was what my dream of Australian cinema would be, so to come back and do
what
that.
happens when you take that with you now? You'll go back to the roles that you've got coming up, but can you hold on to more of that part of yourself?
I hope so. There's an ethos on Justin's set that I think should be on every film set everywhere, and it's everyone working toward a common goal. There's no, you know, hierarchy is the word. You know, it's just about making art and making things that feel true and feel important, especially in an age of like endless content. I think it's important that we make things that matter.
Jacob Elordi, Justin Kurzel, thank you for creating a piece of supreme art and beauty for Australia. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, sir.
much.